Hello students, in our previous model we have discussed about the lesson. The name of the lesson is On the Face of It. Today we will discuss some of the words and some of the questions, or we can say the in-text questions, as well as the terminal questions which are in your textbooks, and some of the words which will be very useful to answer the questions. Let us start with some words. First, strikes up. The meaning of this phrase is begins or starts, withdrawn and defiant. These are the two words which is used for that boy, the boy who got burnt on his face. The name of the boy is Derek in that story. Withdrawn means keeping away from society or seeking solitude. Defiant, disobedient. Disable, injure permanently. Both the persons or both the characteristics in the story is having disability in their body. One has got thin leg and another is having burnt face. Disfigure, spoil the appearance. The face, normal face is spoiled, particularly in that story, the face of that boy. Predicament. Predicament, the meaning is plight or difficulty. Both of them are handicapped and they have a problem of that because of that handicap. Or a situation from the extrication is difficult. Extrication here meaning is free. Explosion, burst with noise. As we know, the bombs or crackers. Attitude, it is a complex mental state. It involves beliefs, feelings, values, dispositions to act in certain ways. Transform, change. Other meanings are alter in form, appearance, or nature. Consider, think in a particular way, or perceive. We have perceptive powers, like we say the sense, seeing, or we can say the sight, smell, taste, touch, likewise. Concept, it is an idea. It may be of abstract or mental or general idea that is inferred or derived from specific instances. Peculiar, strange, unusual, curious, special. Inhibition, this is a conscious exclusion of unacceptable thoughts or desires. It is related to the desires and thoughts. Insecurities, meaning is the state of being subject to danger or injury. Simple meaning is not safe. Complexes, feelings that influence a person's behavior. Sometimes we say inferiority complex or the superiority complex. Humiliation, loss of self-respect. Isolation, state of separation. Impairment, damage. For example, you might have heard about that. Hearing impairment. Those who are not able to listen. or that is result in reduction of strength or quality. So those who are having hearing impairment, they don't have the strength or quality of hearing. Alienation, disassociate, separate, ridicule, subject to laughter, pity, a feeling of sympathy or sorrow for the misfortunes of others. These are the words that can be used when you answer the questions. In your textbook, when you see in the beginning itself, before you read, it is written, and you have to understand what the lesson is about. The lesson starts with it. It's a question itself. Though the title is on the face of it, the question is, this is a play. Play we know which can be performed on the stage or that can be performed, featuring an old man and a small boy meeting in the farmer's garden. Old man, Mr. Lamb, the boy, Mr. Derek or Derry, and the old man strikes up a friendship with the boy. Just we have discussed that words are highlighted in this module. Strikes up a friendship with the boy who is very withdrawn and defiant, that boy's attitude. And the question is, what is the bond that unites the two? That old man strikes up and he becomes success to make a friend with that boy. How? What was that? That we will see. So, how we can say that the old man was successful to make him a friend? Mr. Lamb and Derry have different point of view about life. Mr. Lamb has a positive view while Derry's attitude is totally negative. These things you should know it. Positive and negative. He always looks at the brighter side of the happenings, Mr. Lamb, and Derry, he always looks the darker side of the happening. It's a positive view and negative view. Although Mr. Lamb and Derry are totally different. One has lost his leg, another has got bone on his face. The bond that unites them is that they are both physically disabled and disfigured. One is disabled, another is disfigured. Both are made fun of by various people. People laugh at them. Mr. Lamb has a tin leg because he has lost one leg in a war, and people make fun of him due to the loss. Even then, he does not change his positive thinking toward life. He has a positive view. He loved his life to the fullest. On the other hand, the boy Derry has a disfigured face due to acid have fallen on one side of it. Derry's burnt face makes him want to run away from society. Alienated, separated. But when he meets Mr. Lamb, he gets to know how one should live one's life. And he comes to know that it is a very precious one. This change in Derry also helps him to create a bond with Mr. Lamb. See, the last sentence is highlighted, or it is written in bold. This common predicament that is plight, difficulties, both are handicapped, both are disabled, that united them. What is that bond? Their predicament. And the positive view of that old man has united them. Some in-text questions are there. Your textbook says read and find out. The first question is, who is Mr. Lamb? How does Derry get into his garden? Two questions are there. It's very simple. Everyone can answer. Who is Mr. Lamb? Mr. Lamb is an old man who lives in a big house. He has no family. He lost one of his legs in an explosion in a war. And how does Derry get into his garden? As Derry was walking past Mr. Lamb's garden, felt the place was isolated, so he got into the garden by climbing over the garden wall. Next question is, do you think all this, the conversation which took place in between the Lamb and the Derry, will change Derry's attitude towards Mr. Lamb? Certainly, we can say Derry's attitude towards life itself will entirely change. Mr. Lamb was able to show how the bright side of life. Derry was transformed totally and developed a new understanding about his life. According to his attitude towards Mr. Lamb will also change, and he will consider Mr. Lamb as a true friend. Now, terminal questions are there. The first question is, what is it that draws Derry towards Mr. Lamb in spite of himself? The meaning of the question is, he didn't attracted toward Mr. Lamb. Something was there that attracted him to go close to Mr. Lamb. What is that? That's what we have to answer. Derry finds Mr. Lamb quite different from the other people. First thing that attract Derek or Derry, that he has come across till now. He is impressed by the old man's talk. Another thing, the way of talking about beauty and the beast. Your textbook says these are relative. These are not perfect. Everything is imperfect, according to Lamb's opinion. Pretty girls and the plain talk about how the world will change its attitude towards Derry. Mr. Lamb's concept of the world, friendship, not believing everything one hears, the story about the timid man who locked himself in, and the lie sound peculiar to Derry, but interests him. He understands the underlying message that Mr. Lamb has given him. He is encouraged by Mr. Lamb's word. You will get on the way you want like all the rest. This is the advice that he has given, or he gave to Derry. Gradually, Derry is able to shed his inhibitions, insecurities, fears, and complexes. These things he had, but because of Mr. Lamb's word, that he was able to shed these feelings. The talk with Mr. Lamb is the beginning of his transformation. That's the reason for Derry saying, "You don't know what I could do." Besides, Derry is also drawn towards Mr. Lamb's because both of them have suffered loss and humiliation. and both feel isolated and lonely. So this is the thing, this is what that draws close to Mr. Lamb, or draws Derry close to Mr. Lamb. In which section of the play does Mr. Lamb display sign of loneliness and disappointment? What are the ways in which Mr. Lamb tries to overcome these feelings? See, while reading this lesson, you may be knowing that Mr. Lamb is having positive view and is very happy. He has overcome with his isolation. But when you go through the text, it will show that he also felt loneliness and disappointment. What are they? Mr. Lamb lives alone in a huge house with a large garden. He has no one for company, neither a family nor friends. In spite of this, he is happy because the neighborhood children come to his garden for stealing apples and pears. He spends most of his time watching, listening and thinking. It itself shows that he also felt, these are the signs of loneliness. Most of the time he used to watch, listen and think. This shows that he lacks human company. When Derry asked him to name some of his friends, the old man is at a loss. Meaning he was not able to say the names. Even if he says, that doesn't satisfy that boy Derry. At the end of the scene 1, because in that play there are 3 scenes. The first scene is somewhat very lengthy, second is short and the third one is very short. When Derry promises to Mr. Lamb that he will return, as he rushes home, we hear Mr. Lamb telling himself, so what he said, that itself will show us that he also felt disappointment. We all know, I will come back. They never do, though. Not them. Never do they come back. So these are the words spoken by Mr. Lamb, also shows that he has no company. He felt disappointment. Thus, although Derry promises to come back, Mr. Lamb does not believe him. The words spoken by Mr. Lamb reveal his deepest feeling of loneliness. Although Derry does come back, it is too late, for Mr. Lamb is probably dead in the last scene. Next question is, the actual pain or inconvenience caused by a physical impairment is often much less than sense of alienation. It gives much pain in comparison to the physical pain felt by the person with disabilities. What is the kind of behavior that the person expects from others, those who are disabled? What they expects from the able people or able person? The actual pain or inconvenience, uneasy inconvenience due to a physical impairment is often much less than the sense of alienation felt by the person with disabilities. Why? Because it creates a feeling of loneliness in the physically disabled person. People in society make him realize a person with a physical disability like a tin leg or a burnt face can live a life of respect and honor if he is not ridiculed or pitied. Means they are ridiculed, they are pitied, they show pity on them. So that hurts more, or that hurts much to them. If everyone looks at such person in a negative way, they can never break out of their seclusion from the world. They expect other people to respect them for what they are, instead of continuously reminding them of how they are different. So here Mr. Lamb understands his situation and copes with it successfully, whereas Derry, who is only 14 years old, is not mature enough to cope with his predicament, his difficulties, his problem. That's why he liked Mr. Lamb after meeting him for the first time. A person with a physical impairment expects a normal behavior from others. He wants others to respect him instead of pitying him. Or they expect normal behavior from others. Will Derry get back to his old seclusion, or will Mr. Lamb's brief association affect a change in the kind of life he will lead in the future? It's another question. Suffering from a physical impairment, Derry had become a pessimist, person who looks always the darker side of the life or happening or event. But after he met Mr. Lamb, he gradually began to see the bright side of life. He realized that in the form of Mr. Lamb, he had found a true friend who has shown him the right approach toward life. His attitude is changed. Mr. Lamb was able to change his attitude. He transformed his ideas, thoughts, behavior, attitude. A brief association with Mr. Lamb boosted Derry's self-confidence, believe in self. Sometimes we have to believe on self, and made him respect himself as he was. The new self-esteem, self-respect brought about a major change in Derry, and he told his mother that his looks do not matter. See the change. Earlier he was worrying about his look. How does he look? Now he says to his mother that his looks do not matter, or that doesn't matter. He didn't worry about his looks. A change has certainly come about in Derry's attitude towards himself and towards life in general. It is unlikely that he will revert to his past secluded life, even with Mr. Lamb's probable death at the end of the story. In fact, he will now lead a more active life with the positive thoughts given to him by Mr. Lamb, because Mr. Lamb was the person who taught him the correct approach to life. So in the end of the textbook, if you will find how about. So it says that using your imagination to suggest another ending of the above story. So in the end of the lesson, you will find how about. Here it is being asked, using your imagination to suggest another ending to the above story. Do you remember the last lesson which we have discussed? Should wizard hit mommy? When the story was narrated to that girl by her father, or the father narrated that story to the daughter, the end of the story was, mother goes and hit the wizard. That was the end of the story. But that girl wants to change that end of the story. She doesn't agree with that end of that story. She wanted to change. What does she want? She wants that wizard should hit mommy, or wizard hit mommy, and she demands that when he will narrate the story some other day, he has to say that wizard hit mommy. So likewise in this story, what we have seen in the end? In the end, we see that in the last scene, the third scene. So briefly I will explain about the scene. the first scene, this conversation takes place in between the old man, lamb, and the dairy. That conversation or that meeting that changed the attitude of that boy. So in the end of that first scene, he assures Mr. Lamb that he will come back. The second scene is when he goes back to home, mother warns Derek not to go to that garden again, or not to go and meet with that old man, because she has a different view of that old man. They believe that old man is eccentric, somewhat strange, the person who is never behave normally. In that second scene, the dairy disobeys mother. He becomes defiant. He says that if I do not go there, if I do not go there, I will not go anywhere. And he disobeys the instruction of the mother and leaves. And in the third scene, when he goes there, he saw while picking the apple that old man has fallen and died. This is the end of the story. So sad end is there. So suppose you want to change this end, how you will change? So let us see. The above story can be changed slightly to end on a happy note. It can happen that Derry will make effort to revive Mr. Lamb instead of weeping. Mr. Lamb regains consciousness, gets up with Derry's assistance, and invites Derry to meet him regularly so that Derry can learn more about living a better life for him. Derry is overjoyed and promises to do so. Thank you, and in the next module, I will come up with some more questions and some extracts from the same lesson. Till then, goodbye.